Man, this is a great intro to get us into the mood about, what we're passionate about and what we're passionate about together. Earlier today I was at a school, Webb Middle School, and I often go to schools looking for inspiration. And sometimes when I look for inspiration, I listen to little daily devotionals. And there was a daily devotional that I listened to recently it started with a story. It was a story about a person who had a house plant that they got from their friend. And this house plant had 3 different stalks. And as the house plant grew, the leaves at the top of the stalks got really heavy and flopped the stalks. You know what I'm saying? Like, they couldn't carry the weight. So the stalks were kind of flat, and the person didn't know what to do. Soon after that, they visited a doctor's office, and they saw the same plant, except the stalks were nice and tall, and the leaves, the big leaves, were up. But what they noticed was that in the second plant, the stalks were braided together. And by braiding them together, it prevented the stalks from going down and the leaves from going down and touching the floor. That's what this session is about today. About braiding together stalks. But we're not talking about plants. We're talking about children. We're talking about children and the potential to lift them up if we work together intentionally and purposefully. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. Roy talked about raising the bar. We're raising the bar and giving students opportunities to have career pathways that they didn't even know existed. And in the process, in the film and television industry, we're making sure that there's as much beautiful diversity in those industries as there are in the communities where they film. Thank you. And to get this conversation started, they need no introduction, but I'm going to give the amazing panelists here to my left an opportunity to say hello to you, to introduce themselves, and we're going to get right into the question. And then what we're going to do in about 15, 20 minutes is we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to take questions from you. Okay, so we look forward to answering your questions after we explain how we're going to work intentionally, collaboratively, to braid together to provide amazing opportunities for students. There's an example of Roybal Academy you'll hear about very soon. Let me turn it over to my colleague and extraordinaire over here, Eva Longoria.
I thought you were going to say Blanca. She's the extraordinaire. Hi, I'm Eva Longoria. I'm an actor, director, producer. I'm on the advisory board of Roybal. And I'm happy to be here to have this conversation specifically at South by Southwest, where there's so much intersectionality of industries and careers and professions, because we all overlap. And I'm an academic at heart. I went back to get my master's during Desperate Housewives, like an idiot. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. And I loved it. And I have such an affinity for teachers. My mom was a teacher. My sisters are teachers. I was the last person in my family to get a master's degree. So I was the disappointment in my family as an actor. But I'm happy to be on this particular advisory board, because what we're doing is really merging, an academic education with practical training for our industry in the media. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Blanca Cruz, a very proud principal of Roybal Learning Center, also a teacher at heart, LA Unified School District. I have to say my team is here. Our team is here. Our thought partners are here. I could not do this work without them. It's been an amazing experience, and I just want to say it was about time that we merged the two together. The investments, the partnerships brings in terms of the support, the funding, and even just looking at our students, is they have that, they have that right to succeed. They have that human right. So thank you for having us and for highlighting the work that's happening at Roybal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blanca. I'm Craig Robinson. I'm a Chief Diversity Officer for NBC Universal, one of the founding members, one of the founding studios for the Roybal School, which it just makes my heart sing truly. And I'm also on the Advisory Council for Roybal. And I am just, when you said that, Eva reminded me that my aunt was a librarian. She was a librarian for about 30 years in LAUSD, LA Unified School District. I'm a product of LA Unified School District. I grew up in Echo Park in downtown Los Angeles. and attended public school my entire life. So that also taps into, I think, what we are all bringing here, both professionally and emotionally, in terms of what this means for all of us and what it means for the students.
Hi, I'm Deborah Marcus. I'm with Creative Artists Agency. We're a talent agency based in Los Angeles, but with global reach. We also have a foundation, and I spend most of my time at CAA supporting our public education and public health efforts. And as far as Roybal is concerned, someone recently said I was the quarterback. Yeah. I'll take it. I'm really helping to organize the teams, working in partnership with our school district, with our advisory board members, with our government, to make sure that the promise that we've made to students happens, and happens with rigor. So I'm really honored to be here. And I'll also throw in that I'm a proud graduate of LA Unified too. Wow. So we have a good representation up here. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. What an amazing, let's give it up for this panel here. Really, and I love, someone said it here, you know, it's our professional work, but it's our personal work. It's our personal work. This is, you know, I always say education is not a job, it's a life calling. And this is an extension. What we're talking about here today is an extension of what we feel our purpose is here. So I'm so excited to I want you to hear a little bit more about Roybal. So I'm going to ask the principal to talk a little bit specifically about the programming that the students are exposed to. And then talk to us a little bit, Deborah, after that about how you got connected, because this is not typical. Yeah. Not yet, at least. It will be. But this is not typical. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening in Roybal.
So let me just start off by saying Roybal, for those of you who don't know, is in downtown LA, literally alongside of Echo Park, MacArthur Park, right, you know, where the 101 and 110 intersect. And that's extremely special because it is a community that for many, many years, you know, had one school that serviced the community for 5,000 kids. And so Roybal was established about 15 years ago. We're actually going to celebrate its quinceañera this upcoming year. And very important for our community, our Latino community. But as a whole, Roybal and many of our schools, you know, in public education have always struggled because of a lack of funding. And so when I just think about this partnership and the magnet, it was a thought that we had with our former principal and team. And that's super important because when you have a team that's ready to come in and just innovate and transform schools, you literally imagine, you know, everything that can happen. You don't have the money, but you think about those options. And this came to us back as a team 2017, 2018. Ms. Owens, who's sitting here in the audience, was part of that initial team when we wrote the magnet.
And what classes are the kids taking?
Right now,
that's exciting stuff.
Right now, as we look at from that point now, they are taking everything from film production. We have Mud coming in and working with our students, looking at makeup. And I point to our team because it is a team effort. We've been reaching out. Even IATSE's coming in and doing some training with our students. So they're taking a variety of classes, but they're also taking algebra. And they're also taking science, so they're meeting the requirements for high school graduation while learning about film production.
And to just put a point on that, Roybal is focused on jobs behind the camera, so it's not acting, it's not writing. Well, no, but it's mostly everything that is important. Not the actors.
Lighting.
Not the actors. Yeah. Lighting, makeup, grips, production. I mean, all of these wonderful jobs that really, I mean, for, you know, centuries have kept LA, you know, one of the greatest economies in the world is because of this industry. And so these are the people that make that world go round.
Yeah, so these students are learning those skills in high school in a very engaging way in partnerships with CAA and the unions and NBC, and like they're getting real world experiences in an engaging way, and they're going to have the skills to have these jobs when they graduate too. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how did this start? You were a big part of it.
So it started because our client, George Clooney, had a big idea, and his big idea was to help diversify the pipeline into production jobs in Hollywood. He recognized that those working behind the camera in hair and makeup, editing, production design, didn't look like the communities that he was filming in. And so he called his agent, Brian Lord, who's my boss at CAA, and said, I want to start a school in LA Unified, a traditional public school. And Brian said, of course, we're on it. So he called the superintendent, who was leaving in 2 weeks, who said, I have a school, and I have a principal who already had this idea a couple of years ago. And she started this magnet program, but she has no resources to deliver on the promise that she wants to. And so George said, great. He then called up his friends like Eva Longoria and Kerry Washington and Don Cheadle and Mindy Kaling and Ambassador Nicole Avant and said, will you commit to doing this with me too? Will you put your names on a press release? And they said, of course, because it's George. And we went to work. Then I got the call, because I'm the education person in the agency, to say, okay, we just said we're going to do this thing. How are we going to do it? And so then we together built a team. And Blanca and I met, along with George, who comes to school all the time, and we built our working group. And then we reached out to the studios and to the unions, and they all said yes too. And so in a very short period of time, we raised the money that we needed to support the school for at least 3 years. And we opened our doors less than 12 months later. We have our first cohort in the school now, about 150 students. And the 9th and 10th graders are sort of learning the ecosystem. Like, what are those jobs at the end of a movie credits? And then in the 11th and 12th grade, they're going to focus on those career pathways, and in partnership with the unions, are going to be walked into jobs if that's what they want when they graduate.
That's powerful, man. You see the braiding of the plant here? And it was funny because I visited Roybal Academy a couple months ago. It was January, and it was great. You know, I got to meet the board and the passion and the students, and you know, as you mentioned, Don was there, and Mindy and George, and we were just visiting classrooms. And then at one point in the conversation, George looks over at me because he's not used to getting no for an answer. Apparently, he goes, "We need more money." And so I'm like, "Okay," but what he meant was, look, this has to be something that's available to all students, and he's absolutely right. And you know who else agrees with him? President Biden. In the proposal yesterday, there's over $300 million aimed at career-connected learning. So look, this is just good for kids. So we're pushing it where we believe in it, and I love how they've lifted up their voices. I have tremendous respect because they're lifting up their voices and saying, we need to make sure that our students have the opportunities to get these jobs, and we're going to put our time behind it, and we're going to put our voice behind it. So tremendous respect. So Craig and Eva, why is it important for you two to see diverse faces in these careers and to have pathways like this? What does that mean to you?
Well, as I said, I know for all of us, personal and professional, and I know the point's been made a number of times that these crews need to represent the communities in which they're working, but just as important, they need to represent the communities that are watching these shows. I mean, we take a look at the numbers. Hispanic moviegoers, most big movies open with about a 35% box office from Hispanic moviegoers, which is nearly double the population. So why are we not reflecting who's actually putting billions of dollars into entertainment companies' pockets as well? It's also personal because for so long, I know Eva's heard this, I know many of us have heard this, Don Cheadle was talking about this, the excuse that is so often offered is, oh, there aren't trained young people of color who know how to do these jobs. Well, actually, that's correct, because we haven't trained them, because they haven't been exposed to it. That's a smoke screen. So what we're trying to do is take away the excuses. And you know, you said, I grew up in the zip code of Roybal, 90026. My parents, I'm an only child of a black father and a Chinese-American mother. They wanted me to be surrounded by other children of color, so I grew up, that's why they moved to Echo Park, because they wanted to make sure that I saw myself represented. So I firsthand, and I know that you are working hard daily to change this, but this 50 years ago when I was in grammar school, there was very little attention paid to some of these inner city schools, and certainly no visibility to jobs in the industry. Like, what do you mean? I mean, here we are, 5 miles from studios, and but we may as well be 500 miles away. I, because of my parents' sacrifice, got to go to college, made social connections there, and got my first job at CBS as a result. And that was 5 miles from my home in Echo Park. It may have as well been 5,000 miles. So this is what is so important. And the gentleman said it here earlier. We want these young people to excel, but they can't excel at something they don't even know exists because no one in their family has ever done this job. Now we're going to be bringing these young people. They will be able to tell their children and their grandchildren and their cousins about this wonderful opportunity, these careers with excellent pay, as we talked about.
And healthcare.
Healthcare, tremendous benefits, job protections, because there's so many platitudes, and there's a reason there are platitudes. They're very often true, and that is you can't be what you can't see. So we have to show it to them. So that's why we wanted to be involved. And then you add on, most importantly, Blanca, her faculty, George, Mindy, Don, Eva, who shows up everywhere at the school. The kids are still buzzing about that. Carrie Washington, and Brian, and CAA. I mean, we had to be part of this. We were not going to be left behind from this train. This is game changing.
Yeah. And I think that's why I came aboard, is because this is something that can actually lead to jobs. There's a lot of chief diversity officers at every single company. And if I hear that word one more time, it's like the buzzword of Hollywood. And a lot of times, specifically in TV, a lot of these studios get the check mark for developing diverse projects, but they don't make it out of development. They don't make it onto the screen, or they don't make it onto TV or streamers. And they have these diversity programs, but I'm like, does that lead to a job? They have a writer's diversity program. Does that lead to them in a writer's room? There's a diversity, cinematographer. Does that lead to them joining a crew? And this was the first thing, because I've experienced it when I've tried to crew up. There's no evil person at the top of the studio going, let's not hire people of color, ha, ha, ha. It is that. There isn't a pipeline of talent. And we can't get the job because we don't have the body of work. But I don't have the body of work because I've never had the job. And that's what happened. It's so funny because that's what happened with me. I have a film here that's premiering tomorrow. Yes, Flaming Hot for Searchlight. And I went in, and my agent told me, she goes, you won't get this job. She goes, I'm just saying you should probably get in the room so they should know who you are. But like, it's a big movie. It's a big studio. But you should go in and, try. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try. I'm going to get it. And that was a problem. Me, Eva Longoria, had to go in and say, I know I don't have the body of work to prove to you that I can do this, but I'm telling you I can do it because I believe in myself and I believe in my talents and I believe that. But it was like, a huge hurdle. And then they did roll the dice on me, and they did go, you know what? We kind of believe that she could do this. I made them hire me. But imagine that times 1,000 for every person who needs that job. That they go, well, I've never done sound, but I can learn. I've never done cinematography, but I can, start with the lighting crew. And so that's what we're doing at Roybal, is providing that pipeline of talent through experience, and that's really important.
What I'm going to add to that too, which is what's so cool. Some of the incoming 9th graders shared with us, we're like, why did you pick this school? And there was one student who was like, well, I love animation and I draw, but what's happening now at school is they're creating a community. They're doing it together. They're creating a network. They're going to graduate.
We'll lift each other up.
Yeah.
And
That's
go
right.
into start their own production companies. It's very cool.
It's really inspiring. But it's that. So why is it important? It is important that we have diversity behind the camera, because if you look at our country, the future workforce of America is Latino specifically. Yeah. We're the fastest growing demographic in the United States. So this is our future workforce for many industries, by the way. Yes. Many industries. My foundation works with young Latinas to get into STEM fields because we're only 1% in STEM fields. And so they've never heard the word engineer. I remember I was in a 5th grade class and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the little girl goes, an engineer. And I thought, oh, I love that you've even heard that word in 5th grade. She's like, I'm going to be an engineer. But it's the same thing. I didn't know what a cinematographer was. I didn't know what a production designer was. And so the earlier we can expose these kids into these industries, and then they pick, like we talked to some kids when I was there, and I was like, why did you pick this school? And they said, well, I liked animation, but now I took some editing classes and I think I want to be an editor. Like they totally, took a left turn and are interested in other things.
Thing that is so exciting about this, and I know that we've seen, is that many of these kids were very much, I think, in this country dedicated to college prep, which is great. I had the opportunity. My parents sacrificed so I can go to college. Many of these young people are not going to go to college. Some of them maybe shouldn't go to college. Some of them don't want to go to college. But we can teach them this amazing trade. And then when they come out of school, they will be employable, because I think that we need to get our heads around the fact that not everyone's going to come out of a 4-year college.
Yeah, look, I could just sit here and listen all day because I love the passion. Tú eres un orgullo latina, and I have to tell you, to hear that you're fighting for, look, you represent so much, and what you do with your time, Eva. I just want to tell you publicly, like, the Latino community just appreciates everything you're doing. You are one of those that go back and you reaches back and lifts people up. I just want to tell you that publicly in front of everyone, because as a Latino, I see that, and you're a force, so we're proud of you. We're going to take questions from the audience in a second. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to ask the principal one more quick question, just for the education perspective, right? Look, we're committed to this at the U.S. Department of Education. We saw something amazing, and now it's our job to remove barriers across the country to make sure this happens. We are having conversations in some of the biggest cities, and I'm asking superintendents to sit down with CAA, sit down to learn Roybal's example. I want to see this in New York. I want to see this in Chicago. I want to see this in Miami. I want to see this in Dallas. I want to see this in Atlanta. And I have the commitment of those superintendents. They're ready to go. So we're going to make this happen. What you're doing at Roybal will be felt across the country. I'm telling you now, you're going to have the support of the U.S. Department of Education. We're going to make sure that this happens. There's so many students with so much potential that are just waiting to be tapped on the shoulder. And this is just good pedagogy. This is exciting learning. And the potential that our students have to excel here is great. So with that, how do you connect the dots? Because your educators, they're excited to be a part of this, but they maybe don't have background. How do you partner to make sure that the students are getting good content?
So I'm going to focus just on the teacher right now, because we're talking about the students, they're learning and so forth, but the teachers also are learning. The career exploration that's happening, the teachers are also learning about the industry. The preparation that's happening, the teachers are also getting that professional development. The training that's happening in terms of the kids being able to do the work experience, which we're going to start this summer, even myself, my boss or my thought partner, as we say, we're also learning how to navigate, right, to make sure that happens, and it happens, for all our students, even across our entire school right now. It's a new learning for everyone. But it's something that was, long overdue. And so for our school, in terms of the impact, it's impacting not just the students, not just the teachers, not just us, the school leaders, but also the community. It's going to trickle down to, I always say, that critical hope. Like, hey, we're getting something that we deserve. And so as a whole, for us, it's impacting everyone right now in a very positive way.
Yeah. I can imagine being a teacher working in a school where we're learning this stuff, and, folks like Eva just drop into the school to say hi. It's pretty inspirational.
But that's the thing. It's like, it's. I know there's a lot of celebrities behind it, but as she said, the teachers are the rock stars at this school, and we're just there to support them. But it is about access. It's about access, and that's what Roybal's doing, and CAA and with the studios is connecting these kids that you wouldn't have. A lot of people in this room don't have access to NBC Universal, right? People in this room don't have access to an agent at CAA. Like, how can I get an agent? How can I be a writer? These kids are getting that. How crazy is that? Right?
They're getting it too from, and we've talked about this sort of celebrities on the advisory board, but for our career pathways, we have, Ruth Carter, who did costumes for, Black Panther. Like, she's coming in and teaching the students. She is coming in and teaching the students about costume design. And we have those, award-winning, Tony Award-winning, Oscar Award-winning professionals coming in to inform what the curriculum needs to be so that they can get those jobs. It's incredible.
Intentional collaboration with students at the center. There's so much possible. We talk a lot about the pandemic disrupting our schools. No one said we have to build it back the way it was before. That's shortchanging our kids. Let's do better. This is an example of doing better. So, Deborah, while we're waiting for the questions from the crowd to come up, what advice would you give to other executives that are looking to partner and do something like this? Like, what does it take from your end to make sure this is successful?
So I think there's a few ingredients that have made this effort successful so far. We just started 18 months ago. This was an idea. First, it's knowing how to partner and trusting in partnership. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's not about who had the right idea first. So I think, if we were like, oh, let's start a school, let's go raise $50 million to buy a building, because I hear about other folks doing this. It's what already exists within the system, what talent, what passion, what commitment, So part of the Roybal success is we already had the school. We already had the principal. So I think the willingness to partnership and, Brian Lord, who's one of the top agents in the world, he walked into Blanca's office and says, I don't know anything about education. And she said, good, I don't know anything about Hollywood. But we partnered together to learn. So I think trust and relationships. And then I also think you need leadership. I mean, George Clooney doesn't exist in every industry, but every industry has their George Clooney. And so taking somebody like him who's not scared, who has staying power to lead, and then finding a group of trusted leaders also that are committed to this, not for 6 months, not for the day, for the tweet, but for the long haul. Partners like Eva and partners like NBC. So I think it's leadership. I think it's trust and partnership. And then it's resources. These things cost money. And so people need to put their money where their mouth is. They need to be able to tell this story and share their passions with others in their industry and not be competitive about it, but come on. Right? That's what George's strategy was. You don't come on, you're going to be the only one off this ship.
And I would say for anybody here who is working for a company or thinking of working for a company, and you're trying to put your arms around how you can help a private company, how you can help motivate them to get into these kinds of relationships, because you said it, and that is think about what you have to bring. And think about what you don't have. So we knew what resources we had. We have some of the industry experience. We have people that want to mentor. We have we have infrastructure. You know your students. You know your community. You can help identify these stars. So each one is bringing something to the table. And then the other thing I'll say is that and how lucky are we? And of course, when George Clooney or Eva says, could you please do this? You're like, just where do we sign and how much do you need? But this is a relationship like any other. It takes work. You got to like the person, and pick your partner carefully because you're going to be in it for the long haul together, ideally.
Right. Sheetha, I'll just take the iPad, please. So intentional collaboration requires a commitment to sit down and plan things out. It's not just going to, I like how you said it's not just there for the tweet. You really have to plan this out. You have to make time and space in your organization to make this a priority. That's when we talk about intentional collaboration. That's what I'm talking about. Look,
can I just add one more thing too? Companies are sort of doing a lot of this, social impact CSR as an afterthought. I will say for 28 years, the CAA Foundation has been working in partnership with community to support students in public education, to support. We have the internal knowledge and expertise and relationships at this point to be an effective partner and to lead here. So for private companies, you need to invest in people. In the same way you do your legal and your HR, people that can partner with community.
Yeah, and that's a skill set, right? Someone whose job it's going to be to build those relationships. Someone whose job it's going to be to sit down with the administration and say, this is what we can offer, and be willing to offer something. You can't just say, they're not there, they don't have the credentials, if you're not willing to be a part of the solution. But that's what's so special about this. You've all committed time and energy to do this, and to do it right. And that's why I think it could be replicable. I really do believe you're starting something here, and you have the ingredients to make sure that it could be replicated throughout the country. So we're going to transition now to the part where we're going to get questions from the audience. Oh, they made it up to the screen. Look at that. All right. So let me see. Hi. No, they were telling me to take them from here. So I think there's an app that you do. So let me just start. Is there a video? This is from Sheetal. Is there a video to get a sense of the work at Roybal? What I would like to do is, I'm going to ask the folks in the back, the wizards behind the screen there, to get that video lined up. We're going to tee it up later to make sure that we could show that video so you could see a picture's worth 1,000 words. But the first question that I'm going to go to now from Christina Jones, any advice for establishing similar school models for other industries such as robotics? What players need to be involved for successful sector partnerships? Could you start with that one?
I'm going to start with that one and focus on the education piece in terms of educators. As we talk about replicating this model, we need to also keep in mind that we have to invest in our educators, whether it be computer science, whether it be nursing programs. And we just had this conversation earlier this week with the other smaller schools on our campus. We really need to be ready to support our teachers in this field, whether it be here with Hollywood or computer science. We were just in a workshop a couple minutes ago. Same issue. The young students are graduating very aware of the content, but not of the professional skill set. And so we have to help our teachers, not just with the pedagogy and the content knowledge, but also them learning about those industries. So when I think about replicating this, is how are we going to make sure that our educators and even our leaders, this work has been heavy. It's been a heavy lift. However, it's been an amazing experience because we are doing something completely different. I think part of it is post-pandemic rethinking our schools, rethinking education, and really rethinking what our students had prior to that and the fact that they deserve these opportunities.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this requires an investment not only in our students and the programming, but in the adults that are carrying out the mission. Let me just put another plug here. Let's pay our teachers a competitive salary, please.
Yes.
Let's not forget
Thank you.
that
yes.
in our country, teachers make on average 20% less than people with similar degrees in other fields. So let me just put that in there. We ask of our teachers, let's support our teachers. So another thing that I think might be needed is an advisory board. And I know both of you are on the advisory board. Tell me a little bit about what the role of the advisory board is. And if folks are watching and say, I want to do this in my community, what is the role of the advisory board to keep things moving? Eva?
I think it was very valuable in its inception of like even going over the curriculum in a macro zoom out call, and somebody had made, I think it was Mindy Kaling, who goes, "This feels like a director's workshop. I think you guys are not focusing enough on what the mission was. If you look at this, and then so then you know there's an adjustment and this, and then again the advisory board is full of all the walks of life in our industry. So it's not just celebrities. It's like costume designers, production designers. I mean, there's a great talent brain that we tap into. I think I don't know the answer to how do you do that in a different community. Specifically, I think there was a question about urban versus rural. I don't know how you do that, but you guys would better know.
I would say even just thinking about what CIA has done is giving us access to those experts in that field. So when I think about the role that you all play as advisory boards, you've opened doors for us where our kids now get to meet with individuals who are experts in those fields. So it would be about opening up access doors for them and giving them opportunities for like internships and so forth.
So we're also thinking about scale. When this opportunity came up, I'm like, it's great, but it's one school in downtown LA, and it's 150 kids at first. Like, it's a lot of resources for 150 kids, important kids. So we just made an investment to bring a lot of this learning, this teaching online. And so we're working to record, develop video that's interactive and intended for hybrid use, both in classroom and outside of the classroom, so that we can export to really anywhere in the world where there's production or there's interest in production. And we partnered with a company called Smash Cut, who works with NYU to do some of their summer school work, to do the same for Roybal, so that it can go anywhere. And it's pretty cool.
I love that.
So you and I need to talk because I didn't actually realize that you were doing that. The pandemic was obviously horrible, but it taught us a lot of things. It taught us the power of technology and how we could talk to people remotely in a way that is so much more effective than the conference calls that we were all accustomed to. We have something at NBC Universal called the NBCU Academy. It's starting in our news division, but it's now spreading out across the rest of our enterprise, and we have reached out to 45 universities across the country, many of them in rural centers, and with a focus on historically black colleges and Hispanic serving institutions. And they can get this instruction from, it's like a master class online, no matter if they're sitting in a farmhouse or if they're sitting in a city. So I think that that we can actually find a way to combine on that, because because some of these kids are not going to be able to move to a large city, but we can get to them.
I love this is how good this panel is. They already answered the next question. The next question was, how do we move this into rural communities? But look, I love what you said. How do we take it and make it accessible? Because not every community is going to have someone available to pop into the school. So what you're doing in making it digital and having it archived, like I think the word master class was used, now you have the experts. And for those children, I was in Kentucky about a month ago. Those kids deserve the same opportunities. And oftentimes they feel like I have to leave my hometown to do that. But that may not be the case as you catalog and develop a rich repertoire of those classes. So I think, to answer Lauren Gonzalez, where are you, Lauren? Thanks for the question, Lauren. I will
also add, it used to be you have to move to LA to be in production. The last two projects I've done have been in Albuquerque. Obviously, Atlanta's exploded. Obviously, there's productions here in Texas. I mean, it is really it's just everywhere now, and especially if you have a state that has tax incentives. So those opportunities are coming up in places you would never think of.
Yeah, and Craig, you said it. The pandemic. We learned a lot from the pandemic. Anywhere, anytime learning is possible now. We just have to change our education systems to make sure that we embrace them, right? I think that's the case. Thank you. All right, let's see what we can do. Lauren, did we answer your question? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Mark is asking, how do we compare these programs and contrast them with traditional career and technical education programs?
Well, I'm sorry, you're the educator, but I'm going to say, I'm sorry, but not knowing about all of the other programs, this actually makes me, you'll have the answer, but it makes me think of another question to pose. I think it's important for communities to think about what opportunities there are in their cities, because not every city has 60,000 below the line production jobs like Los Angeles. But if you're in Minneapolis and 3M is your big, is one of your big manufacturers there, you find you narrow in on where the jobs can be that the city can support. So I think that's how it probably differs, and that's why this was so genius. You knew these jobs were there, so you were like, well, we need to train these kids for these jobs. It was very bespoke for Los Angeles.
We knew that there was no program nearby that focused on this at the high school level. But to compare it to CTE, we actually do have a CTE teacher in our magnet program. Prior to the magnet, we had a CTE program. Right. And a lot of it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It was curriculum-based, but the experience was limited to the classroom. The kids were getting the learning. They were learning about the field. But again, it goes back to the real-world experience, the application. I think that's what really distinguishes this. Our kids are actually getting training, and they're getting access to even visiting studios and being able to see that learning themselves on that set. Gives them that hope they need, gives them that opportunity they need. So when I look at the traditional CT programs that have existed even within our own district, through our current plan, we're looking at how do we open up and maximize on those opportunities beyond the classroom.
And then I'll also just add the unions. When we started this, George and Brian both said, we got to get the union, because that is the barrier for so many people accessing these jobs. And so, Mike Miller, who's the EVP of IATSE International, was yes. He was like, okay, Brian, I got it, yes. And Brian's like, okay, I'll hang up then. And so that really differentiates. IATSE has never worked with a high school before to prepare students. They do it in post-secondary, but never in secondary.
So shout out to IATSE and to those who are taking a risk and saying, let me try something different here. Because if we do what we've done, we're going to get the same results. And the intentional collaboration here requires people go into areas where they're not comfortable. Just like we know the principal wasn't comfortable in the film industry, the film industry wasn't comfortable with the schools, how they work. That's why it's important that we, put energy and time into that intentional collaboration. I think that's critical. Eva?
No, just IATSE, for people who don't know what that is. That's the union that you have to be in order to work in the industry. And that is systematically a barrier. You need so many hours. You need so many. And a lot of these positions, you're like, I can't not get paid while working. Sometimes these hours don't count. And so to have a partnership with IATSE and trying to form a pathway to entry is huge. Yeah. It's huge, especially because I was telling the secretary of the story. We were in New York and we were trying to find hairstylists who were used to working with women of color's hair, right? And we had a lot of actors who were like, this is a very special skill, and there wasn't enough people of color in the hair union that could come aboard, and we had to bring in obviously outside people because we want our actors to feel comfortable with who's doing their hair. That matters, and that's cultural, right? Like that, we have to be able to say yes. Your union has to reflect who's working.
Yeah.
And those jobs have systematically not been available.
And I think that it takes this kind of attention and continued pushing, because I think that we all know unions historically, IATSE, just like many others, are based on seniority, and that is something that is very special to unions. And so we have some convincing to do, but we're going to do it.
But it's work, and again, if it's easy to do,
right,
it would have been done already. And that's what's special about this, man. This isn't fully baked yet. You're seeing right now innovation in education like we've never seen. Yep. This is why I'm so proud of it. This is why I'm standing behind it. This is why I want to make sure it's going to work. Because it's easy to say, we can't because of the hours. No, let's try to fix that. And let's bring people around the table and solve a problem that hasn't been solved yet, like we did 3 years ago when we tried to open schools during a pandemic. We have the same goals. How are we problem solving together? Your issue of you don't have enough hours and it's hard to work for free when you have a family to support. That reminds me a little bit of student teachers. We're asking them to work for 4 months for free, and then we wonder why there's not more diversity in that field when very few people can afford to work for free for 4 months. That's another topic for another day.
But it isn't, because we're also asking them to invest and to take out loans. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to replicate this. We're going to need a lot more teachers. Mm-hmm. And teachers are also afraid of dealing with that loan debt.
Yeah.
And so that's also important, because our teachers may want to be there working alongside of our Hollywood partners, but they've got to deal with that as well.
Absolutely.
And I know you've been advocating.
You know it.
So thank you. Because
we
need that, because my teachers need to be able to worry about
$55 billion in debt forgiveness. You're absolutely right. Teachers, if you haven't done it yet, public service loan forgiveness, apply. We'll set up a booth outside. Look, it matters, man. We got to take care of our professionals. You said something before, Craig, that really resonated with me. When students leave our high schools, they should have options. I graduated from a technical high school. I learned how to do automotive technology for 4 years. A teacher tapped me and said, Miguel, you might make a good teacher. Why don't you try that? So I did. I had options. Students leave with skills, could join the workforce, love what they're doing, go back and get a degree. Sometimes the employer pays for the degree. Like, what we're doing here is providing options for children.
But if we're graduating these young people with no options, we know how that generally ends.
Exactly. So I love that children are having options now, right? They can go into the workforce and explore a little bit and say, you know what, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to do something else. Before they're getting into $150,000 in debt, jumping into something.
Secretary, I was there that day in January. It was sideways rain in Los Angeles. Yeah. Eva, you lived in L.A. No one shows up for anything when it sprinkles. George was there. Mindy was. I mean, everybody was there. The secretary was there, and the second gentleman was there.
Yeah.
And it was extraordinary to hear this talk about what was just going to be done. There was no taking no for an answer. And there was a young lady and a young man named Kennedy and Charisma, the two students there that sat at the table. You could see them changing before your eyes. Not only are they seeing that there is a path beyond 12th grade, which they may not have seen. Who knows what support they're getting from their parents, if any, and that's no one's fault. These are the realities. But that the other part that I don't think that we've even talked about, that people care. People are showing, George Clooney and Eva Longoria are showing up and saying, we see you, and we want to help you work in this industry. I think for many of us who have had mentors and supporters our whole lives, we underestimate how important that is, because some of these kids are missing that.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And the kids said their own words. They go, we feel special. We must be special if Eva Longoria is coming to our school. And that makes them stand up with a little more pride.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to add, though, because the question is here in terms of students with disabilities, and that's
I was going to go to that
extremely
one.
important that we address that.
Yeah.
Our program, our magnet program, public school, we do have students with special needs in our program, and they participate throughout the program, and we actually have resource teachers going into the classroom and supporting that. So as the kids are learning this, they have that support. So we're not closing the doors; it's for everyone.
That's fantastic. Thank you for bringing that up. What we have here is an example of what we need to see, and you're absolutely right. Could you speak a little bit more about, Principal, a little bit more about the supports that you give to the students? Because a good education program, and I don't have to tell the educators in here, the content is the second best thing. It's that they learn. They learn about themselves. You talked about Charisma and how she felt confident. When you have good programming, students feel more confident. They learn about themselves, what their skills are. It could be the film industry. It could be technical education. They just feel a sense of purpose. So it lifts up our students. Could you talk a little bit about what you've seen and how you see the program at Roybal doing that for students?
So just in 1 year, we were just talking about this over lunchtime, just in 1 year, we've seen major changes, not just in their own critical hope in terms of like, I have an opportunity here to do this, but even in just their overall development of skill set. We're really focusing on that professional skill set because we focus a lot on the academics, which is super important. We're sending them out, but how do they navigate that other world when they go into the field? So we're really providing support with that, rethinking how we're going to do our advisory, rethinking how we're going to even deal when we address behaviors. Right, because our kids need to learn about this stuff before they enter the field. Hey, this is not allowed. When you go into Hollywood, you're not going to be able to do this. So really addressing that's been a big learning for us, especially post-pandemic. We talk about, social emotional needs. Right. So finding the balance between the academics, the SEL for our kids support, but also how we as adults respond to that. That's been a big area, I think, for me, just learning. How do we support our adults to also go through that learning with our students? More than anything, I think also the exposure. The support isn't just in the classroom, but also beyond that classroom. So we've done a lot of field trips, a lot of guest speakers. It's about giving them that worldview of the industry, not just through the books, not just through maybe a project, but what does this look like in application? So we have experts coming in, talking, and we had one not too long ago coming in, making a direct connection between algebra and even representing your clients, getting the best deal for them.
Also, this summer we're doing movie nights, right?
Yes.
And so exposing them to films that they see themselves reflected in, that aren't blockbusters. It's not Marvel. It's not, Hollywood gets to decide what heroes look like. And so to expose them to films that they go, oh my God, that's a different kind of hero. That's important.
Say more, please. Just say more about that. Why is that important?
Well, it's like Craig said, you can't be it if you can't see it. But it is, we have, the power to decide who is defined a hero, and that hero often doesn't look like us, right? Communities of color, and so to have that opportunity in something as simple as a movie night, and do a curriculum of movies that we go, these are important and weighted movies that you should know.
Love it.
And filmmakers you should champion, and you should mimic, and you should imitate, and you should follow, the path makers.
And
That's
and
important
and
because that's not
heroes-
who we see
Look,
at the Academy
leadership
Awards.
matters.
Yeah.
Leadership matters. You're showing leadership while some are trying to use their position of leadership to ban curriculums and ban books. We have leaders bringing diversity into the classrooms. I love it. I love it. And what you said earlier too, man, you said it before, leadership matters, right? Leadership is often underrated. You're leading in your fields right now. And you're bringing together opportunities for students that they would not have had. Look, this time is going by quick. We have about 6 minutes left. I want to make sure we hear from all of you one more time. And I'm going to ask you to think about next steps, right? I said before, this is not fully baked yet. We're still working on the details. We're talking about replicating it. We have a lot of shared passion around making this work, and we're going to continue to do it. But finish the sentence for me in about a minute each, please. For this to be successful across the country, we need to, and I'll start with you.
We need to figure out how to sustain and scale this work. That's success. Success at Roybal is not enough. It needs to be scalable to other industries and sustained. So we need to find out how can we access those government dollars and those philanthropic dollars, and how do we engage corporate America in committing to that success.
Very well said. Thank you. Correct?
In order for this to be successful, we have to find a way to make it modular and user-friendly, because what we know is that in some of these cities or some of these states we're going to be going and they're going to say, I don't know how to do that. That sounds really hard. And we say, here is the toolkit by which you do it. But what about, and we'll say, no, we figured that out. But what about, no, we figured that out too. But what about we figured, so we need to make it, we need to make it turnkey, as turnkey as possible, to take away again, because everyone's going to have 1,000 reasons why they can't do it. So we need to knock down all those reasons to say no so that they have to say yes.
I love it. Sustainable funding, make it easy to replicate. Let's solve those problems now, and let's put together a playbook.
Because we can anticipate what they're going to say.
A playbook of how to do it. Yeah, I love it. What do we need to do?
Invest in our teachers.
Yeah.
Invest in our teachers. But because our teachers, I was once a teacher, are going to be those leaders of those programs that we're about to replicate, right? We're about to open. But also continue to invest in public education, because while I love the resources coming in from our team, it should be the norm.
Right.
That public schools are getting the monies that are needed to train our teachers, you know, have our planning time, curriculum development, professional development, for myself, training as well, being able to come to this conference also, you know, conferences like this, learning from each other and being able to just continue to learn. So invest in public education and teachers.
Love it. Love it. Thank you.
I would say we need to know what we mean by success. We have to define the metric system of what does that mean, because it's different for each kid and each community. I think the rest of the questions was, how do you do it here? How do we do it here? How do we do it here? You can't make it sustainable and scalable unless LA is successful. And what does success mean? What's that metric? Is it jobs created? Is it salary? Is it economic mobility? Is it career path? I think it's all of those things, but to have a metric that makes it undeniable to go to a L'Oreal, a Procter & Gamble, a blah, 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 whatever, and get that to point and go, look what we did. Look how successful this is. What does that mean is something we have to really hone in on and define.
I love, you brought it up twice. You said, you know, so why are we doing this? Are the results any different? I think you're absolutely right. Are we getting more students in careers that they learned about at Roybal Academy? That's the goal. Giving students options to explore that. Look, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't know how many words a video's worth, but we're going to transition now to the video of our visit to Roybal Academy.
We're here at the Roybal Magnet Film and Television School, and this is really a vocational school of sorts where we are hoping to create pathways to the industry for marginalized students and especially students from this community to get to, you know, take advantage of and have the opportunity to avail themselves of these 60,000 below-the-line jobs.
We have to build you guys up to have the skills and the skill set to be the new pipeline of talent in Hollywood.
We just did like everything like people do like acting film, but they're teaching us like as we going.
There's not a kid here that knew what a visual effects supervisor industries. And so we thought, well, let's first tell them what the jobs are. There's 60,000 of them in Los Angeles that are, they're good paying jobs. And give them an opportunity to succeed, to learn a trade, to be able to graduate from high school. You'll have a diploma that says, hey, if you want to go to college, you go to college, you got it. But if you want to go to work, you now have the unions on your side, you have all the studios prepared to hire you, the networks prepared to hire you. And if you've learned a trade, then you're going to have a job.
And I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned, is that you only learn by doing. So when you have the opportunity to do it, say yes.
So it's real world, doing practical application.
Ultimately, we hope that we're going to have a pipeline that works in both ways, so that these kids can accomplish and they can actually reach back and bring kids forward too, and that this industry can look more like the people that it's telling the stories about.
Isn't that awesome? I started today talking about a braided plant. And if the plant wasn't braided, what would happen to the leaves, right? Well, we're braiding plants in education through intentional partnerships, public-private partnerships. And we were honored to share with you an example of that. At the Department of Education, we're raising the bar. Our students deserve better opportunities, and we know we're going to get much farther if we work together. Please give it up for the panel that presented today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for those that are watching online. Thank you.